Michigan, or frustrate you about Michigan, depending on where you are on all of it. But I happen to be one that loves the seasons. I am ready for summer to get here, and so we'll see what the Lord has in store and wait for Him to decide. While we wait for everyone to get logged on this morning, let me just say that I'm extremely proud of our president. I feel that the plan that he and his team have rolled out is phenomenal. I think it is incredibly thought through. I think it is very prudent. I love the way that he's working with the governors. I think that that is good management. And I hope that governors, including ours, will work with him and make his plan successful. That's part of making the whole thing work together. And I'm trusting that our governor will be rolling out something soon regarding Michigan. And so I emailed our staff and deacons this morning, and I'm looking forward to sharing with them some thoughts and hearing from them as we roll out a detailed plan now that we have some direction from our government as to where we are and where we're going, to be able to roll out a plan for Faith Baptist Church. And so I've been praying about it, thinking about it for weeks, and trying to anticipate timing and when the virus would get under control and when our government would begin to open up some things and when would just be prudent to be able to get life back to normal. And I think we're getting close. We're certainly on the right track, and I'm very, very proud of our president. I think his plan that he has rolled out is a very, very well thought out and very, very doable plan. And it will be exciting to see how it all unfolds. And I trust that you've been praying, and now we'll participate in making those things successful. And so we're looking forward to the future. Let me just say welcome to Daily Focus, and we're glad that you have joined us again this morning, and I trust that you're anticipating a great weekend. From what the weather tells me, next week is supposed to feel much more like spring. This week, for whatever reason, we got a little taste and reminder of winter, but next week is supposed to look a lot and feel a lot like spring. And then maybe we'll run into May with summer-like weather. Who knows? And the Lord knows. We'll just have to trust Him for what He provides. As we look at James, we've been really looking at what God teaches us regarding practical tips for everyday living. And so yesterday we talked about true wisdom. What does a wise person look like? And we really boiled it down to the difference between a wise person and a foolish person, or a person who is spiritually wise and someone who is considered wise from the world's perspective, is simply this: a wise person pursues peace. They know how to get along with people. They know how to discipline their own flesh. They know how to be gracious. They know how to pursue peace. And a foolish person, or a person who is wise in the world's eyes, tends to compete with people, tends to stir up contention and strife, and there always seems to be drama. There always seems to be an issue. They're always needing to deal with somebody or something, and rather critical. So God brings us into chapter 4, and He just asks a really pointed question. And He says, "From whence comes wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence, even of your lust that war in your members? Ye lust and have not, ye kill and desire to have and cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not, because ye ask not. Ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lusts. Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. And then he begins to talk about the importance or the remedy to these wars and fightings. But he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. And then he gives some very specific things that we'll talk about on Monday. But then verse 10 says, humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. So here we have the question, why are you at odds with people? Why are you fighting? Why are you stirring up strife? Why is there strife? Why does it seem that you've pitted two sides against each other? And then he answers it. We are masters at blaming other people for the condition that we're in. We are masters at transferring the responsibility. We have watched children do it. When we were children, we did it. And whether it was, why did you? Well, he or she. Well, why did you hit your brother? Well, he hit me first, and whatever the case may be, it's getting the responsibility off of my action and saying my action was only contingent upon someone else's action. And it really is a transfer of responsibility. Well, we're really good at that. And so we say, well, the only reason I said that is because you said. The only reason I had to do that was because, and oftentimes we're letting ourselves off the hook by putting the pressure or the blame on somebody else. And God really makes us think about something. He said, no, I want you to realize that the choices you make are your choice. So no matter what that person said, you made a choice. No matter what that person did, you made a choice. And the choice is really rooted back to what we talked about yesterday, and that is, are you going to follow God's plan of wisdom and pursue peace? Or are you going to follow the world's plan of wisdom and create strife and fightings? And really, we have to be able to answer that. And really, some of it comes back to what is our agenda? Do we exist really to help people come to a right conclusion about who God is and what God is like? To help them understand what God has done, what God is doing, what God has promised to do? Is that our real agenda? Do we realize that we represent the creator of the world and the savior of mankind? Do we really feel motivated by that calling? Or have we bought the ego trip lie and we think life is about making me happy, getting what I want, climbing whatever ladder it is that I'm trying to climb in order to get to the destination that I'm trying to get to? Have we bought the world's lie of wisdom that it's all about you? 1 Corinthians chapter 3 reminds the Corinthian church that Paul says, I'd like to talk to you as spiritual people or spiritually wise, but I can't. And the reason is you're immature. You're still selfish. You're still crying mine. You still want your way. And so he said there's envy, strife, and division, because this is the result of selfishness. So God picks up on that here in James chapter 4, and he says, you want to know why there's envy and strife and fightings and wars? Because you're selfish. You're spiritually immature. And you got to grow up. You're going to have to reject worldly wisdom, and you're going to have to embrace godly wisdom. And he says that in verse number 4, that when we choose worldly wisdom over God's path, we're really committing spiritual adultery against God. Because if we're going to be a friend with that, we really are the enemy of what God's trying to do. We're choosing to follow what the devil would like to promote rather than what God is trying to promote. And so he says in verse number 2, it's kind of a confusing verse until you break it apart, but he's basically saying this: you know why you're fighting? Because you got the wrong view of God and you got the wrong view of people. You see, God is in control and he makes no mistakes, and he has your good in mind for everything that he's doing. It's ultimately from an eternal perspective, but he wants you to trust him. And when you lean on your own understanding, you're going to mess it all up. And you want what you want, and you pursue what you want, and you try to get it because you think it's going to solve your problem or make you happy or whatever your other goals are. And so he said in verse number 2, we don't have the right view of God and we don't have the right view of people. What happens is when we're selfish, we tend to view people in one of two ways. We either view them as problems that need to be removed. He uses strong language like kill. And he's not necessarily meaning that we're trying to murder people. He just simply means that you see them as problems that have to be removed. Whether it's a guy who's standing in your way of a promotion at work, or whether it's the guy who got the Sunday school teaching position at church, or whether it's a sibling who seems to get more attention than you, or was able to have something that you wanted, whatever the difference is. But he said you tend to view people as problems that need to be removed, or you see them as pawns to be manipulated. So you have the wrong view of people. People are there so that you can serve them, so you can edify them, so you can encourage them, so you can help them come to a right conclusion about who God is and what God is like, what God is doing, how we can participate in his program, and make life about this wonderful thing that God is providing. But when we make it all about us, we tend to create problems. And so he says, really, the solution is this: you got to humble yourself. You see, we all need grace. And the only way to get God's grace is to humble ourselves. He giveth grace unto the humble, but he resists the proud. Can I say verse 3 is another really big deal? It talks about when we're selfish, we tend to even try to view God the same way. Either God's the problem because he's not giving me what I want. I asked him and it's not happened. I asked him to heal and he didn't heal. I asked him to give me that job and I didn't get it. I asked him to protect my kids and they were in an accident. I told God what to do and he didn't do it. He's the problem. And if he wasn't in my way, I would be able to get these things. And God says, don't do that. Or sometimes we think God is a pawn. And literally a genie in a bottle that we ring the bell and we tell him what we need and he's supposed to just provide it. We think that we're going to make promises or deals with God and then, we're going to fool him into giving us what we want, and we're just not going to do that. And so really this text reminds us that if we're going to have good relationships the way God designed them, then we're going to have to start viewing God right and viewing people right and have a humble view of ourselves. And then when we'll do that, God will lift us up. And so what does it look like to be humble? What does it look like to let God have his rightful place, to have others have their rightful place, and to make sure we're in our rightful place? Well, we'll talk about that next week, starting on Monday as we look at the other verses in this text. But can I encourage you today? Let's be humble. Let's pursue peace. Let's be an example of godly wisdom. And may God bless you today. May God bless your weekend. May he make you a trophy of his grace and goodness. And may we rejoice in who he is and what he's doing and what he has promised to do and the privilege that is ours to participate. You have a great weekend. May God